I found my grandpa's hidden war diary on a quiet Sunday morning, when the sun rose slowly over the trees behind our old family home. The air felt still and heavy, like something important waited to be discovered. I did not plan to uncover anything huge that day. I only wanted to clean the attic because Mom kept telling me it was full of dust and old memories. I climbed the narrow stairs slowly because the wood made a soft creaking sound under every step. The attic smelled like old paper and forgotten years. The light entered through a tiny window and made long stripes across the floor. I began moving boxes and pushing aside old suitcases when I noticed a small metal box hidden under a broken wooden chair. The box was covered with a thin layer of dust. It looked untouched for many decades. I picked it up and felt a strange chill run through my chest. The lock was rusted but weak. I pulled, and after a moment it opened with a soft snap. Inside the box I saw a black leather notebook. The edges were worn and the pages had turned yellow. On the first page I saw my grandpa's name written in faded ink. I felt my heartbeat rise because Grandpa never talked about his past. He died when I was 11, and the only thing he ever said about the war was that some memories should stay buried. I sat on the attic floor with the diary in my hands. My palms felt sweaty and I did not know why. I opened the first page and the handwriting was shaky but clear. The first lines read, "This diary is for my eyes only. If anyone finds it, I pray they understand why silence became my only shield." I felt the breath catch in my throat. I turned the page and began reading the first entry. Grandpa wrote about being drafted at 19. He described the long train. Her name was Lily. I never heard this name before. My grandma was named Margaret. This was the first truth hidden from our family. I kept reading slowly because each line felt heavier than the last. Grandpa wrote that Lily used to write letters to him every week. He carried them in his jacket pocket everywhere he went. One night his unit was ambushed. It was cold and dark and he could barely see the silhouettes of soldiers around him. He thought he would die. He wrote that he felt the letters in his pocket like a small piece of hope. After the ambush he survived, but many men did not. The next morning he discovered that the letters were gone. They had burned when a piece of shrapnel hit his jacket. He wrote that it felt like losing Lily forever. The next entry was different. It had only a few lines. It said, "She died. Her last letter never reached me. I only heard the news months later." I dropped the diary for a moment because my hands shook. I knew Grandpa lost people in the war, but I never knew he lost the woman he loved before he met Grandma. I picked up the diary again and kept reading. Grandpa wrote that he felt hollow for many years. He did not want to return home because home did not feel like home anymore. Then he wrote that he met Margaret at a small diner near the base. He said she was gentle and kind and she helped him remember what it felt like to breathe again. But he also wrote that a part of him always stayed with Lily. A part that he never allowed anyone to touch. I sat there for a long time. The attic felt colder now. I turned more pages and found entries from the later years of his life. He wrote about raising my father. He wrote about trying to be a strong parent. He wrote about wanting to protect the family from the darkness he carried. Then I found the entry said, "The truth is heavier than any battlefield." I made a choice. I left something behind in the war. Something I never confessed. If anyone ever finds this diary, I hope they can forgive me. My hands trembled. I turned the page slowly. The next entry revealed something I never imagined. He wrote about a child. Not my father. Not my aunt. A child born during the war. A child he never met. A child he believed survived but he never searched for. He wrote that he felt unworthy. He felt broken by guilt. He told himself that the child would have a better life without him. Reading this felt like a punch to the chest. I had an unknown relative somewhere in the world. A piece of my grandfather living a life we never knew existed. The next lines read, "If my family discovers this, I hope they understand that silence was the only way I knew to keep them safe." I felt tears build in my eyes because Grandpa carried this heartbreak alone for decades. He never told Grandma. He never told Dad. He never told anyone. I flipped more pages and found the final entry. It said, "If someone from my bloodline finds this diary, please find the truth about my lost child. If they are alive, they deserve to know that I never forgot them." My heart beat hard inside my chest. I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. I closed the diary and held it against my chest. I knew I had to tell my family. I knew I had to search. My grandfather asked for forgiveness and truth. I felt a responsibility to finish what he could not. I stood up and walked out of the attic slowly. The sunlight felt brighter and the world felt different. I walked downstairs where my mother was in the kitchen. She looked at the diary in my hands and her eyes widened. I told her everything. Every word. Every secret. Her knees grew weak and she sank into a chair. She said she always knew Grandpa carried something heavy, but she never imagined this. We called my father. He arrived within minutes. He sat at the table with the diary between us. He could not speak at first. His hands covered his face. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. He said, "We have to find them. Whoever they are. They deserve to know the truth." And that is where the real journey began. A journey to uncover the missing branch of our family. A journey to honor Grandpa. A journey to heal the wounds he carried alone. We began searching records in old archives. We contacted veteran organizations. We looked through government documents. Every day felt like peeling back another layer of forgotten history. I kept the diary beside me the entire time. Every word felt like Grandpa guiding us. Weeks passed before we found the first clue. A name. Place. A record that hinted at a child born in a refugee zone. My father sat beside me when we found it. His eyes filled with the same mixture of fear and hope that I felt. We kept searching. We refused to give up. Finally, after months, we found a match in DNA records. A woman living across the country who shared our blood. She was older than my father. She had grown children. And she had no idea that her father was an American soldier. We reached out gently, carefully, respectfully. When she learned the truth, she cried. She said she always felt like something was missing, but she never knew what. She agreed to meet us. The day she arrived, my entire family gathered in our living room. She stepped inside slowly. Her eyes scanned the room. My father stood up first and walked toward her. He stopped in front of her. He looked into her eyes. He said, "Dad would have been proud to meet you." She covered her mouth as tears fell. She said, "I wish he had looked for me." My father said, "He did in his own way. He left his truth for us to find. And now we are here. Family at last." We all embraced her. The room felt full of something powerful. Something deep. Something healing. Later that night, I sat outside with the diary in my hands. The sky was clear and the stars felt brighter. I whispered, "We found her, Grandpa. She is home. We will carry your memory with love, not silence." And in that moment I felt peace. Peace for him. Peace for us. Peace for the truth finally brought to light. After the night ended, I placed the diary back inside the metal box and set it on my desk because I wanted to keep it safe. Sleep did not come easily because my mind kept replaying every word Grandpa wrote and every moment from the reunion earlier that day. The truth felt heavy but also strangely warm, like a long-lost piece of our family had finally returned to where it always belonged. When morning arrived, the house felt different, almost like the walls carried a new kind of history. The woman who was my newly discovered aunt stayed in the guest room overnight. She woke early and sat in the kitchen sipping hot tea with my mother. My father joined them soon after, and I could hear their soft voices drifting down the hallway. I stepped into the kitchen and everyone looked at me with a gentle expression. My aunt smiled and said, "You brought me here. You opened the door to a life I never imagined." I felt my chest tighten with emotion because I never expected to become the bridge between two worlds that had been separated for so many decades. We decided to spend the whole day together. We talked for hours and shared stories from our childhoods. She told us how she grew up never knowing her father. She said her mother spoke of a soldier with kind eyes but very little else. She always believed he died in the war. She said she never stopped wondering who he was. My father listened carefully, his hands folded tightly like he held on to every word. He told her about Grandpa, his strength, his quiet nature, his way of protecting the family even when he never spoke about his own pain. My aunt wiped tears from her eyes. She said, "He sounds like a good man." My father nodded and said, "He was a good man. He just carried more than he could ever speak about." We sat there together. As the day went on, we showed her old family photographs. She looked at them slowly, touching each picture with gentle fingers, as if she wanted to feel the presence of the man she never knew. When she held a photo of Grandpa in uniform, her hands trembled. She stared at his face for a long time. Then she whispered, "I see myself in him." We all grew quiet because the moment felt sacred. Later I took her to the attic to show her where I found the diary. She stood in the dim light and looked around with a soft, thoughtful expression. "You said he hid it under this old chair?" she asked. I nodded. She stepped forward, bent down, and touched the spot where the metal box once lay. Then she closed her eyes. "I think he wanted this to be found someday," she said softly. "Maybe he could not speak the truth, but he wanted someone to uncover it." Her words settled deep into my heart. We stood there for a while in silence. Then she turned to me and said, "Thank you for bringing me home." That night we all gathered for dinner. My mother cooked a large meal because she said this day deserved something special. My aunt sat beside my father, and I could see how much he wanted to protect her just like Grandpa once protected us. Over dinner she asked if she could read the diary. My father looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. He said, "It belongs to all of us now." After dinner we sat in the living room. The air felt still. My aunt held the diary in her hands and opened it carefully like it was something fragile and alive. She read each page slowly. Her breathing changed several times. Sometimes she placed her hand over her chest. Sometimes she wiped tears from her eyes. When she finished, she closed the diary and held it tightly. She looked at my father and said, "He loved deeply. He suffered quietly. But he never forgot." My father leaned forward. He said, "I wish he could have told us." She shook her head. Maybe he thought silence would protect everyone. Maybe this was the only way he could let the truth live. We talked for hours about what to do next. Should we tell the extended family? Should we record the story for future generations? Should we keep parts of the diary private? In the end, we agreed on one thing first. We needed to honor Grandpa in a way that matched the truth he carried. The next weekend we drove to the small cemetery where Grandpa was buried. The sky was clear and the wind moved gently through the grass. We brought fresh flowers and placed them on his grave. My aunt stood in front of the headstone for a long time. She touched the engraved name. She whispered, "I found you at last." My father placed his hand on her shoulder. I stood beside them, feeling the weight of the moment. Then my aunt asked if she could say something aloud. We nodded. She took a deep breath. She said, "I forgive you. I do not blame you. I understand why you stayed silent." She paused. Her voice trembled. "I am here now. Our families are connected. Your blood runs through us all." We stood there together and the air felt warm despite the slight wind. When we left the cemetery, my father said we should gather the entire family for a meeting, because the truth needed to be shared gently and clearly. The next week our relatives filled our living room. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all looking confused but curious. My father explained everything slowly without rushing. He told them about the diary, the lost child, the years of silence, and the truth finally uncovered. Some family members gasped. Some covered their mouths. Some looked shocked, but others looked deeply moved. My father introduced my aunt to everyone. She stood with grace even though she was overwhelmed. My cousins embraced her. My uncles shook her hand. My aunts hugged her tightly. No one rejected her. No one questioned her worth. Instead, they welcomed her into the family like she had always been a missing piece. For a moment I felt Grandpa there with us. In the warmth. In the unity. In the acceptance. After everyone left, I sat alone with the diary again. I turned through the pages slowly. Then I found a blank section at the back. My heart stirred because I felt like it was waiting for something. I picked up a pen and wrote a new entry. Not in his handwriting. Not in his words. But in mine. I wrote about the day I found the diary. I wrote about how the truth healed the family. I wrote about the sister my father never knew. I wrote about the day we visited his grave. I wrote that his silence no longer felt like a wall. Felt like a path. A hard, painful path that finally led us to unity. When I finished writing, I closed the diary and held it against my heart. Then I placed it back inside the metal box. From that day on, the diary became something sacred. A symbol of truth. A guide for the future. A reminder that buried stories still carry power. Weeks passed, but the story did not fade. My aunt visited often. She helped my father explore old records. She met more relatives. She even brought her children to visit us. They blended with our family like they had always belonged. The house felt fuller and warmer. Life seemed brighter. One evening my aunt called me and said she wanted to visit the place where Grandpa served. She wanted to see with her own eyes the land where her life began. She asked if I would go with her. I said yes without hesitation. My father also agreed to join. We planned the trip with care. Months later we boarded a plane. During the flight my aunt held the diary in her hands. She said, "I want to bring him with us." The journey felt emotional because we knew we were walking into the past. When we arrived, the world felt different. The air smelled different. The land felt soaked in old history. We visited old bases now abandoned. We walked along riverbanks where Grandpa once wrote in his diary. We met historians who helped us piece together more of his timeline. Each step felt like following Grandpa through the years he kept locked away in his heart. At one point my aunt stopped walking. She stared at a quiet field filled with tall grass. She whispered, "Maybe he stood here someday. Maybe he thought about home while standing right here." We stood beside her in silence. My father placed his arm around her gently. Later that evening we visited a small local museum that held records from the war. Inside we found a picture that stunned us. This is the woman who shaped his heart. We gazed at the image in silence. The past felt alive. Real. Present. We took a copy of the photo. When we stepped outside, the sun was setting. The sky was gold. My father looked at the horizon and said, "He loved. He lost. He lived. And now we finally understand him." My aunt said, "He is still guiding us." We ended the trip with a sense of closure. When we returned home, we placed the new photo inside the diary. Right beside the page where Grandpa wrote about Lily. We felt it belonged there. A piece of truth reunited with the rest of his story. Life slowly returned to normal. But the truth never left us. It became part of who we were. Part of our identity. Part of our future. As the months passed, our family slowly adjusted to the new connection that had formed between us and my aunt. What once felt like a shocking revelation now felt natural, like she had always been a part of our world, simply waiting to be found. She began visiting regularly, and every visit carried a new layer of closeness. Her laughter filled our home like the sound of something long missing finally returning. One peaceful Saturday she came over with a box she had kept for years. She said it belonged to her mother, and she never understood why her mother guarded it so carefully. Now she believed she knew the reason. We sat together at the dining table and she opened the small wooden box. Inside we found a faded piece of cloth that looked like part of a uniform and an old photograph. The photograph showed her mother standing outside a field hospital. She looked tired but strong. Her arm rested on the shoulder of a young soldier. We leaned closer. The young soldier was Grandpa. The image felt like a missing puzzle piece that finally fit. My aunt whispered that her mother must have kept this as a memory of the man she loved. It felt like the room held the weight of two lives that had crossed in a time of war and pain and love. We placed the photo beside the diary. Together they formed a story that felt fuller, deeper, and more whole. For the first time I understood how powerful these silent histories could be. Not every truth is spoken. Some truths wait patiently until they are uncovered by the right hands at the right time. As weeks went by, my aunt grew closer with my father. They talked constantly about Grandpa, about the war, about the years lost. They often sat on the porch together in the evening light speaking about everything and nothing. Sometimes I joined them. Sometimes I watched from the window as the two of them slowly built the bond they never had the chance to form in childhood. One warm evening my aunt said she wanted to host a small gathering at her home. She wanted the family to meet her children and their families. She wanted everyone to feel fully connected. The day of the gathering arrived and we drove to her house, which was a cozy place filled with framed pictures and soft lighting. It felt warm and welcoming. Her children greeted us with open arms. They asked questions about Grandpa, wanting to know every detail we could give. My father showed them the diary. They listened carefully as he explained the entries. Their faces softened with emotion. They said, "He never met us, but we carry him just the same." My aunt placed her hand on her heart. She said, "He lives in all of us." A feeling of unity filled the room. It felt like a new beginning forged out of old pain and unspoken truths. Later that evening my aunt asked if we would like to plant a tree in her yard in honor of Grandpa. We agreed. She brought out a small oak sapling. Together we dug a hole in the soft earth. My father lowered the sapling gently. As the sun dropped behind the trees, the sapling stood firm in the earth. It felt like a living symbol of healing, a bridge between past, present, and future. After we went home, I sat on my bed thinking about everything we had discovered. The diary, the hidden child, the love story, the pain, the long silence. It all formed a timeline that shaped who we were as a family. I felt grateful that Grandpa left the diary where I could find it. It was as if he chose me to uncover the truth, to break the silence, to reconnect the broken branches of our family tree. One afternoon I received a call from my aunt. She sounded excited. She said she found more documents inside the box her mother left. She asked if we could meet at her house. When we arrived, she spread the documents across the dining table. There were letters written by her mother. Some were incomplete, some faded, but together they formed another part of the story we had yet to learn. Her mother had written about the fear of raising a child alone. She wrote about wanting to tell Grandpa but never having the chance because communication was lost in the chaos of war. She wrote that she believed he would have been a good father. My father read the letters with quiet reverence. He said softly, "He would have cared deeply. He just never got the chance." My aunt nodded. She said, "I always wondered what kind of man he was. Now I know. He was flawed and wounded, but he was also brave and loyal and full of love. He did not know how to express." We collected the documents and placed them with the diary. Together they formed a shared history, a story that belonged to all of us. As the seasons changed, our lives settled into a new sense of balance. My aunt became a constant presence. Her children became close friends of mine. We formed traditions, dinners together every month, gatherings on holiday. She wanted to create a memorial for Grandpa and for all the soldiers who carried similar heavy stories. She contacted a local veterans organization and asked if she could honor her father through a public display. They agreed. They offered a small section of their museum to present his diary and photographs. My father and I helped her prepare everything. We cleaned the diary carefully. We printed copies of the photographs. We wrote a short tribute explaining how the truth came to light through a hidden diary and a determined search for answers. The day of the memorial arrived. Veterans' families and locals gathered for the unveiling. My aunt stood before the crowd with tears in her eyes. She shared the story of her father. She spoke of lost love, of war, of silence, of discovery, and of the joy of being reunited with a family she never knew. My father stepped forward and said, "His story is one of pain but also of hope." His silence led us here to truth and to each other. The crowd listened with deep respect. Some wiped their eyes. Some nodded with understanding. After the ceremony, many people approached us. They shared their own stories. Stories of soldiers who came home with memories they never spoke aloud. Stories of families who felt pieces of their history missing. We realized our story was not rare. It was simply one that had finally been uncovered. When we returned home after the memorial, my aunt looked at me with a soft expression. She said, "You gave me a father. You gave my children a grandfather. You gave us a history." I felt my throat tighten. I said, "Grandpa left the truth for us." I only opened the box. She placed her hand on my shoulder. "No," she said. "You opened the path." She hugged me tightly. I felt the warmth of family surrounding me like a shield. In the months a guide that brought us together and helped us understand the man who shaped our family from the shadows of silence. As the days passed, I felt myself drawn again and again to the metal box that held the diary. Every time I opened it, I felt like I stepped into another world. A world filled with my grandpa's thoughts, his fears, his hopes, and his hidden pain. It felt like he was still speaking to me, guiding me, showing me who he truly was beneath the silence he carried all his life. One evening after everyone went to sleep, I sat alone in the living room with the diary resting on my lap. I flipped through the pages slowly. Then something caught my eye. A tiny crease at the edge of a page that looked slightly thicker than the others. I pressed on it gently. The page lifted. And underneath I found a hidden pocket. Inside the pocket was a folded piece of paper. The ink was faint but still readable. My hand shook as I unfolded it carefully. The words were written in a different tone, more desperate, more raw. The note said, "If my child ever reads this, know that you were never forgotten. Know that I carried your memory even when I could not carry myself. Know that I wished for you every night. Know that I loved you even though the world pulled us apart." I closed my eyes and felt the weight of those words press into my heart. This was written for my aunt. For the daughter he never met. I folded the note back up and held it against my forehead. I whispered, "She knows, Grandpa. She knows now. She forgives you. She belongs with us." When I told my aunt about the hidden note, her eyes filled with tears. She held it gently against her chest. She whispered, "He tried. He really tried." I nodded. He carried this love even when life made it impossible to show. She placed the note inside a small glass frame and hung it on her bedroom wall. Our families grew closer. We began holding weekly dinners at alternating houses. My aunt always prepared dishes her mother used to make. She said it helped her feel connected to her roots. My mother cooked traditional meals from our side. The blending of flavors made the meals feel like a symbolic merging of two histories that had long remained divided. One afternoon, my father suggested we gather everyone to create a family history book. A book that documented every detail we had uncovered. A book that preserved the truth for future generations. My aunt loved the idea. She said, "Let us make sure no one in this family will ever live with missing pieces again." We divided the work. My father would write about Grandpa's early life. My aunt would write about her childhood and her mother's strength. I would write about the discovery of the diary and the journey that followed. Together we would gather photographs, letters, documents, and memories. We spent months working on it. Every page felt meaningful. Every word felt like stitching together a torn fabric. One evening, while adding the final details, my father paused and looked at the large binder filled with pages. He said, "This is more than a book. This is healing." My aunt placed her hand over his. She said, "This is truth. This is love. This is our family." When the family history book was complete, we held a small gathering to present it. Each family member placed their hand on the cover. My aunt whispered, "Let this be the start of a new legacy." We placed the book in a wooden chest beside the diary. The chest became a symbol of our past, our present, and the future we were building together. Months later, my aunt asked if she could visit Grandpa's grave again. She said she needed to speak to him once more. We agreed and drove there on a cool autumn morning. "I forgive you fully and completely. I know you loved me in the ways you could. I know you carried me in your heart even when you could not hold me in your arms. I am here now. I am home. And I promise I will keep your memory alive with honor." My father lowered himself beside her. He said, "I wish he could see us now." She nodded and said, "He sees us. Feel it." We stood together in silence. The wind moved gently through the trees. The world felt peaceful, almost sacred, as if the earth itself acknowledged the moment of closure. After we returned home, I felt inspired to continue writing. I wanted to add another section to the diary. A message from me to Grandpa. A message of gratitude. I opened the blank pages at the back and wrote, "Thank you for trusting the world with your truth. Thank you for leaving the path open. Thank you for showing us that even silence holds meaning. Your story changed us. Your love united us. You are remembered. You are honored. You are forgiven." I closed the diary and felt a sense of calm settle over me. As time went on, the connection between our families grew deeper. My aunt became a second mother to me. Her children became more like siblings. We spent holidays together, shared road trips, visited places Grandpa once spoke about in the diary. Each experience felt like another chapter in the healing of our family. One day my aunt said she wanted to start a scholarship fund in Grandpa's name. A fund for children of veterans. She said it would honor his sacrifices and help others who lived in the shadow of war. My father agreed. He said it was the perfect way to keep Grandpa's legacy alive. We launched the scholarship months later. It grew quickly as people